Hello, listeners. I'm the Bedtime Storyteller. If you want to listen to some horror stories before bed to help you relax, subscribe to my channel and I will take you on a journey through the stories. Also, where are you from and what time is it at your place? Next, I'm going to tell you about the 10th episode of the first season of The Candle in the Tomb. Our wooden-handled grenade is standard infantry equipment, consisting of 3 parts, with the top wrapped in iron sheet into a cylindrical shape and the bottom being a wooden handle. After being triggered, the explosive inside triggers the iron sheet fragments to kill the enemy. But the power is not very strong. The big guy left a grenade, and I took another one. Seeing that many fireballs had already rushed over, I pulled out the fuse and threw the wooden-handled grenade with white smoke. The grenade exploded into a cloud of white smoke, and the dozen blue fireballs flying in front were hit by the exploding shrapnel and fell to the ground one after another. But more fireballs continued to swarm from behind. Lonning was in the front, and the other 3 were in the rear. They used the semi-automatic rifles in their hands to retreat and shoot. Each of them had more than 20 bullets, and they were all shot in less than 2 minutes. If you want to deal with the blue fireballs formed by those weird ladybugs, you can only shoot with a gun. If you have any contact with them, you will be burned. A rifle without bullets is no better than a fire stick. The big guy threw away his rifle, took out the last grenade, and shouted to me, "August who? It's time, shall we?" Lunning and I supported Trevor, and the 4 of us formed a circle, wrapping the grenade in the big guy's hand in the middle. I stared at the grenade in front of me. As long as the big guy pulled the string, everything would be destroyed in a few seconds. The final moment has finally arrived. At this time, I don't plan to think too much about other things. First, those fireballs are getting closer and closer, and there is no time to think too much. Secondly, I am worried that thinking too much about life and death will make me weak. I have always wanted to be a special combat hero like young Jency, but I didn't die on the battlefield. Instead, I came to the end of my life at the foot of Kunlun Mountain. I was really unwilling. I made up my mind and let the big guy detonate the grenade. Lonning had already closed her eyes tightly and waited for death. Suddenly she thought of something and stood up and pulled us. Listen to the sound of the water flow. It's very close to the underground river. Let's jump into the river. Just now I was only busy shooting and preparing to commit suicide with a grenade. I had thrown the underground river behind my mind. In the chaos, I didn't hear the rumbling sound of the water flow. After hearing what Lonning said, I thought there was still a way to survive. If we can jump into the river in advance, those fireballs, although powerful, can't do anything to us. It was said that thousands of blue fireballs were close at hand. The 4 survivors were eager to survive and ran desperately towards the roaring water flow. From the sound of the water, it was only a dozen meters away. We couldn't run a few steps. After passing the end of the underground cave, a large waterfall appeared in front of us. There was a large natural underground lake under the waterfall. Before I could take a closer look, I felt a burning sensation on my back, which must have been caused by the fireball hitting my back. As long as I got a small spark, the flames would immediately engulf my whole body. At this critical moment of life and death, I had no time to think, and I jumped into the lake. In the chaos, I saw the big guy and the other 3 people were also burned, screaming and jumping into the lake one after another. I dived into the water, and the blue flames on my body were immediately extinguished by the lake water. Fire and water cannot coexist. The other flying insects seemed to know the power of the lake water, and only hovered 2 or 3 meters away from the lake's surface, not daring to rush down to attack. I raised my head from the water to breathe, and found that the big guy also emerged, but there was no sign of Lonning and Trevor. I was worried that they did not know how to swim and drowned in the lake. I took a deep breath and prepared to dive into the water again to save them. At this time, Lonning had already floated up from the lake with Trevor. It turned out that Trevor had never swum in his life. After jumping into the lake, he was choked by the water and fainted. Lonning saw him and dived into the lake to rescue him. Fortunately, he didn't drown for long. Trevor coughed a few mouthfuls of water and woke up again. Tibetan customs do not allow bathing and swimming in the lake. Trevor muttered sutras and asked Buddha for forgiveness. The sky above the lake was illuminated by the flames of countless fireballs, as bright as day. The 4 people gathered together. Although it was early spring, they felt that the underground water was not cold. Instead, they felt a little warm. It was a warm lake formed by geothermal action. The big guy cursed. "Damn it, the gun is gone." It sank to the bottom of the lake. I reminded him, "We are out of bullets, and the gun is useless. Now let's find a way to leave. Keep your head down and be careful of those bugs rushing down." The big guy didn't believe that those bugs covered in fire could rush into the lake. He grinned, and soon his smile froze. Thousands of fireballs flashing blue light were gradually gathering to form a huge flame, rushing down with a whoosh. He quickly dived back into the lake. I took a breath and was about to go down. I saw Trevor next to me was stunned. He was born afraid of the lake and didn't dare to dive into the lake to avoid it. I had to force his head into the water and pull his arm to swim to the depths. The diameter of the big fireball reached dozens of meters. Once it touched the surface of the lake, it triggered water vapor. Although the fireball was big, the lake was even wider. The suicidal attack methods of the ladybugs did not work, and they drowned in the water. The bottom of the lake was originally dark, but the fire above illuminated it, and I could barely see the environment more than 10 meters underwater. There were countless big fish swimming slowly in the deep water. These fish were completely different from those I had seen before. The big fish had very long whiskers, which looked like salmon. Because they lived in a dark environment, their eyes had degenerated, and only 2 white spots were left. I was frightened by the strange appearance of these big fish and swallowed a few mouthfuls of water. I saw Trevor kicking his hands and feet and couldn't hold his breath anymore. I wanted to struggle to swim up to breathe. It happened that the bottom of the lake suddenly became dark. I estimated that the insects were almost dead, so I pulled Trevor to the surface of the lake. A layer of dead ladybugs floated on the lake. Without the fire, it was dark everywhere. I shouted to the big guy. "Big guy, do you still have a flashlight?" The big guy replied, "We lost them all. There's nothing left. Let's go in the dark this time." Suddenly my eyes lit up. Lonning also emerged from the lake and wiped the water off her face with her hand. In her other hand she held a military-style flashlight. "These are the last 2 I have with me. Fortunately, I kept them in my pocket and didn't fall into the bottom of the lake. Everyone pulled each other to climb up the shore. They all felt tired and hungry. They had no energy to move. After more than 10 hours without food, let alone flesh and blood, even if they were really made of iron, they would not be able to hold on. The big guy jumped into the lake again and stabbed a fish with a bayonet. He scraped the fish scales randomly and cut it into several slices. I tasted it first. The raw fish tasted okay, not too fishy, but slightly bitter. It tasted very fragrant after chewing a few more bites. Only Trevor said that he would not eat even if the sky was high. The army also has ethnic disciplines, and it is not allowed to eat fish in Tibet, but I thought that Kunlun Mountain is at the junction of Qinghai and Tibet. According to the location, we are still on the Qinghai side, and there are more Hui people in Qinghai than Tibetans, so eating fish here is not a violation of discipline. In fact, even if it is really a violation of discipline at this time, I can't care. I am so hungry that my eyes are blue. Special circumstances can only be treated specially. The three of us wolfed down a big fish raw, and felt that they were still a little unsatisfied. So the big guy swam into the lake to fish again. Lonning checked the wound on Trevor's foot, and I walked around the lake to see if there was any place to go out. The water flow of the waterfall is so large, this lake should have a place to divert the water. The drop of the big waterfall is dozens of meters. According to Loning's estimation, the river system in front of us should be an underground tributary of the Yarlung Zangbo River, and there may be volcanoes deep underground, so the lake water is warm. I took Loning's crooked flashlight and found a gap in the underground lake. The lake water flowed out through this gap. This waterway was a cave 7 or 8 meters high. The bottom was completely flooded with water. There was no way to go. If you want to move forward, you can only swim out of the water. I went back to Loning and told her what I saw. Loning's map and compass were lost, so she could only guess intuitively. She has been engaged in surveying and mapping for many years and has rich experience. She estimated that our location is not far from the unfrozen spring. The unfrozen spring does not freeze even in the severe winter, which means there is lava underground. The problem is where to get back to the ground. It is not a solution to keep walking underground. The only feasible solution now is to walk along the river, because only where there is a river will it not be a dead end. The big guy also came back dejectedly. He didn't catch any fish this time. We didn't want to stop any more. The three people who are good at swimming put Trevor in the middle and swam towards a distance of this cave along the direction of the water flow. Although the surface of this underground river is not wide, the undercurrent is very strong. With the impact of the water flow, it is not difficult to half drift and half swim. However, this tunnel is too long and the water temperature is much higher than before. All I can smell is the smell of sulfur. Even in the water, I still feel dry mouth and tongue. The big guy was a little anxious and complained while swimming. We may have made the mistake of left-wing blind activism this time. Why haven't we reached the end after swimming for so long? The water flow here is so fast that there is no place to stand and take a breath. It is better to turn back and swim back. I criticized the big guy and said, "What have you been doing before? You have swum so far, and now you are asking how long the red flag can be raised." Do you have doubts about whether our revolution can achieve final victory? You have just taken the first step of the long march and you are starting to waver? You grit your teeth and hold on. The big guy argued. How can you be, so what can I say? I just want to keep some strength for the revolution. If you do this, who will be held responsible for the losses caused to the revolution? We had just said half of our words when Lonning exclaimed, Do you see any animals behind us? It seems to be a water monster. I also heard unusual noises in the water behind me. I turned back and shone the flashlight. The water behind me was rolling and a huge black shadow was approaching quickly from the water. The flashlight did not have enough illumination range to see what it was. However, those who come with bad intentions will not come with good intentions. We all pulled out our bayonets and prepared for battle.